Hello and welcome to the Met Office 10-day trend. Now, if you're tuning in hoping to get one over on the bookies, then I'm going to disappoint. I'm not about to tell you whether it's definitely going to be a white Christmas or not. However, we will be looking at the trends in the run-up to the Christmas period, and we are expecting a bit of a change because it's pretty cold out there at the moment, but slowly, particularly over the weekend, we are expecting things to be turning a little bit milder. And at the moment, the suggestions are that the trends next week is that the most likely scenario is that the milder weather may well persist, at least into the run-up to Christmas. But that's all to come. Let's focus on what's going on outside at the moment, because there's been plenty of weather over the past few days, and we've still got cold air sitting across the UK currently. But let's take a look at the other side of the Atlantic, because here the air is even colder. The purple colours plunging south across eastern Canada. I'm showing you this because this cold plunge hitting some relatively warm air further south is driving quite a strong jet stream. That contrast in temperatures at the surface actually driving what's going on high up in the atmosphere, with an active jet stream pushing to the north and then across the Atlantic dipping to the south. So we're still on the cold side of the jet stream, but because the jet stream is pretty active, our weather is pretty active too. And we've got low pressure systems sitting nearby, bringing strong and gusty winds and plenty of showers. But because we're on the cold side of the jet, we've still got relatively cold air, although not as cold as it was earlier in the week. The showers that we see will continue to have a wintry mix, and there's a continued likelihood of frost and a continued threat of icy stretches. Now, many in the east on Thursday will have a dry and a sunny day, but it will still feel pretty cold wherever you are because of those brisk winds, and particularly with the showers. Now, the weather changes a little bit on Friday. The low pressures slink away, but there's still a lot of isobars on the chart, and they're pointing due north. So northerly winds setting in for Friday. Not as cold as the northerly winds we had last week, but still, there'll be a frost on Friday morning. Most places will have a sparkling day of sunshine, but it will be on the cold side. And then that change I talked about through the weekend. Still frosty on Saturday morning, yes, but gradually I think we'll see more clouds spilling in through the weekend, and that in turn will ever so slowly turn things a bit milder. Now we can take a look at that again on the pressure chart with those northerly winds on Friday, and then weather fronts coming in from the Atlantic, switching the winds around so that by Sunday we're looking at westerly winds, bringing the milder air from the Atlantic. Let's take a look at that again with the temperatures on this time. So the blue colours just tend to get moved away as these weather fronts introduce that milder air for the end of Sunday. Notice the cold air never too far away though from northern Scotland. But it does look as if things will turn milder and cloudier through the course of the weekend. And that means a switch in the problems from the weather. Less ice and snow, but with more cloud and milder air coming in over the cold surface, it could turn pretty murky, and we're more likely to have impacts from the weather from mist and fog early next week. Now, how long will that last? That's the big question. And again, we need to look at the jet stream. I'm going to show you this switch here from late this week. We saw this earlier, the jet stream driving to the south, to what's happening by the early part of next week. The jet stream is way to the north of the UK, so our weather will be very different indeed. We're no longer on the cold side like we are later this week. We are now on the warm side of the jet, and this milder air will be pushing in across the UK, and our weather will be, well, overall much more slow moving, which is why we're going to have potentially problems with mist and fog. How long will it last? Well, now we need to look at the trends beyond and well into next week. This graph showing the temperature trend for Manchester, but Manchester fairly typical of the towns and cities across the UK with a temperature trend next week. You can see here the line where it's cold at the moment down here, but it does bump up as we go through the weekend. The dates along the bottom starting on Wednesday, going to the weekend, and then well into next week. So there's a definite trend here for the temperatures to rise through the weekend and to the early part of next week. And the overall theme as we go towards the following weekend, the run-up to Christmas, most likely that the mild theme will continue. But notice some trends there, some of the dips in the line suggesting that cold incursions, as we call them, could occur. But at the moment, if we do see any of those colder spells, it doesn't look like they're going to last too long. And it has to be taken from this graph. The most likely scenario in the run-up to Christmas is that the mild weather will persist. It's a long way off, and things can change. But that is the most likely scenario in the run-up to Christmas, which means for impact, if you're traveling next week, the most likely problem you can encounter will be with mist and fog. But notice the words probable and most likely. This is a long way off. So if you are traveling next week, you need to stay tuned to the forecast. Stay updated. We'll be constantly updating all of our web pages, and download the Met Office weather app, and you can track the weather yourself day by day.